Hi, good evening, everyone. We're going to begin in just a minute or so. We're still letting people into the room.
I'm ready when you guys are.
Thank you. You guys, we're going to start in 2 minutes. We're still letting people into the meeting, and we'll begin with an announcement from Camilla and from Courtney Adams.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us for the first DAC General Body Meeting of 2021. I hope that your years are off to a good start. And my name is Courtney Adams. I am the district's Family and Community Engagement Coordinator. I also serve as the District Advisory Committee Liaison. And before we get the meeting started, we want to make sure that our families that are interested in hearing this meeting in Spanish are able to do so. So I'm going to kick it off to Camila Alvarez with an announcement.
Buenas tardes y muchas gracias por estar con nosotros. Solamente le quiero avisar que si está en esta reunión y quiere escuchar la reunión en español durante todo el tiempo, puede hacer eso. Si está llamando por teléfono lo puede hacer, pero si está en su celular o si está en línea, solamente tiene que ir a la parte de abajo de los controles de su reunión y hacer clic en interpretación y va a aparecer una muchacha que está haciendo toda la reunión en español. Así que lo puede escuchar así. Si tiene alguna pregunta sobre eso, puede preguntar ahora y yo lo puedo ayudar a que escuche la reunión en español. Muchas gracias.
All right, thank you. And here is today's agenda. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. DeMonte Rochester, the chair of the DAC Executive Committee.
Welcome to our first meeting of this month. We're glad you guys are able to join us. I'm going to introduce you to our board. I am, of course, the chair, Monte Rochester, vice chair, Susan. And then we have Steve, Erica, and Susan, help me out.
We have Jensen, Adams.
Sierra, and Jessen.
Thank you.
Those are our board members that are on the DAC Executive Committee, and I'll turn it back over to our host.
And you guys welcome this evening, and we have a full agenda, so we're going to jump right in. We're going to be hearing first from Dr. Bedell. We then are following up with a few announcements, and then we have a presentation. You know, we didn't have enough democracy today, we're going to learn about our legislative agenda from our board member Jennifer Wolfsie. So at this time, Dr. Bedell, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say to us tonight.
Well, thank you, Susan Stocking, DeMontre, Rochester, and all of the members of the District Advisory Council Board, and then all of our parents and guardians who are here today checking in with us, and any staff. Y'all, it's just been a very interesting past 9 months. I would say 10 months. I think we're getting very close now to almost being a year of having our students out of school, and we badly need to get our kids back into school. And so the first thing that I want to talk to you all about is just to bring you up to date on the conversations we've been having. As you all know, there are vaccines that are available. We've hit phase 1B. We thought that honestly we would be able to start vaccination of some of our employees this week, and then we received a notification from the governor that educators are at the bottom tier of 1B, which could potentially slow us up to the tune of about 4 weeks before we are eligible to begin vaccination. So myself, along with one of our charter leaders, have put in a call so that we both could speak to the governor together to urge and to just help him understand that we need to get these kids in school sooner rather than later, and that by getting the vaccinations out or getting the vaccines out to our staff and personnel within the system will allow for us to begin to have some level of economic recovery. It's very difficult on me to tell my staff members that you all have to go back to school without the vaccination, because we tried that back in November. And when we tried that in November, we actually tested 49 of our educators who were willing to come back, or not willing. They were basically told they have to come back so we can service our high-minute students. We found ourselves almost on a daily basis with 30% or so of them out. Just due to contact tracing, and it resulted in a couple of people resigning. We lost a certified teacher. We lost a pair that was highly qualified, and we ended up shutting it down after 3 weeks. So what we think at this point is that we're hoping that the vaccination can begin hopefully within that first or second week in February, and then our goal at this point tentatively is to get our teachers back into their classrooms during that first week in March 1st or whatever that date is, and then they can become acclimated and get in their classrooms ready and begin teaching from their classrooms. So we'll still continue on virtual, and then what we are looking at is potentially the 15th being the date that we will bring students back. All of the parents who have opted to have their students on the distant learning model, those kids will be coming back into our schools. The tentative date now that we're targeting is March 15th. If we can get the vaccinations done earlier and we can move that up a week earlier or two, we will do so. But that is what we're looking at right now. And we have a lot of logistics that we have to work through with our bargaining units to make sure that everybody is understand what we're looking to do, and that there's communication out. And then as we work on backward planning, we're backward map planning from the 15th to make sure that everything's ready from a mitigation standpoint, communication standpoint, and we will be giving these updates to you all very frequently as we continue to move closer and closer to bringing students back. But I do have to make sure that I'm updating our board and keeping them apprised of the decisions. And so I have a meeting with the union on Friday, and I'm anticipating that everything's should go over pretty well. Just all depends on when we can get the vaccines in here. And we've already put a survey out, parents. We have about 70% of our staff that said that if the vaccine's available, they are ready to take it. We probably have another 14% that is basically said no. and then we have another, and then the remainder are undecided. You know, the goal is that you want to at least get to 70% of your people taking that vaccine. We think we should easily be able to hit the 75% mark and maybe higher. We'll continue to work with our medical experts to come in and speak to those that are undecided and those who are no's and educate them. But once the window closed, we're coming back to work. Whether people have taken it or not, we're coming back to work. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that's the plan. I think our school district has been very responsive and very sensitive to meeting the needs of our adults and protecting them, while also doing what we can to make sure that we educate our kids. But we got to get them back in. The state expects us to take the state assessment at the end of this year, even though it will not count for accreditation purposes or anything like that. We have to take the test, and we need to have our kids back in our buildings in an environment where they're going to be able to do their best. We are doing interim assessments right now, and we may be the only system doing interim assessments like this pre-K through 12. We have kids taking interim assessments for PE, areas that are not tested. We need to know where our kids are, and then how are we going to respond and intervene based on those standards that they have not mastered or standards that they've fallen further behind. And so we'll continue to update you all on the learning loss update. We'll make sure that we're going to have a very thorough plan in place, and just highlights. We're looking at night school as an option at some of our secondary schools. We're looking at potentially Saturday schools. We're looking at tutorials, and we're also looking at an extended summer, for summer learning to address the learning loss. And a lot of that can be taken care of with our CARES Act money. And then we're going to take a deeper look at how do we get some additional instructional time in for next year. And next year meaning that we might have to have a couple of days during the week where we have a longer school day that only focuses on interventions to address learning loss. Because those other options that I shared with you are inequitable. There are going to be some families who take advantage of Saturday school, who take advantage of after school tutorials, who take advantage of night school. There's a lot of them who won't. So we're going to have to build some supports in while we have students at our schools, and that's going to be the conversation I'm having with the union president on Friday as we think about next year's calendar and what we're going to do in that area. Now, moving over, I want to go ahead and I want to, because I want to give you all a few opportunities to ask some questions. Can we go to the next slide so I can just go over this piece on what the state has done, and then I'll open it up for a few questions. KCPS and accreditation. As you all know, we've been having a lot of conversations with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We have, over the last 3 years of assessments being offered, our school district has earned over 70% of the APR points. So it raised the question, why are we still unaccredited when we are actually, in my opinion, and I told the commissioner this, we're outperforming some districts in this state that are fully accredited. And I said, this system that you all have in place protects school districts that have struggled on this new assessment, but it is virtually impossible for districts that are trying to move up. And so as a result of that conversation, the state board took this framework for provisional school districts to the state board. And the state board said that they approve it. And so what this means now is they're going to come back and they're going to take a look at every single district that's provisional, and they're going to do a systems review. They're going to look at leadership and governance. We have stable leadership. I've been here now almost 5 years. We have a stable board of directors. We have a solid school improvement plan in our strategic plan. Educator effect. We started this school year off with only 3 vacancies in an urban school. We have building principals that have been with us consistently. We don't have a lot of turnover, and financially we're solid. Graduation rates, we moved from 68% to almost 75% over the last 4 years. Advanced credit, we had high schools not even offering AP classes when I started in this district. We now have hundreds of kids taking AP exams, and hundreds of kids have moved from scoring a 1 to a 2, and we've gone from 0 kids scoring a qualifying score of 3, 4, or 5 to 52 this past year passing. We, in terms of looking at MAP, we've earned exceeding growth expectations in math and reading 2 consecutive years, and we outpaced the state in science. So we're doing good. And then they're going to look at local assessments, which is our iReady and these interim assessments, possibly. And then when you look at success predictors, are we increasing preschool opportunities? Yes, the district has increased. Almost every year we've increased. Our instructional day is longer. They talk about instructional day loss. We have the longest one of the longest days in the state of Missouri. So we have more minutes than most districts do. And then elementary untracked indicators, we know that we've been able to keep up with our students as we're moving them from one grade level to the next. And then high school untracked to graduate. What are we doing to reduce failure rates? What are we doing to make sure that kids have opportunities to earn their credits? Those indicators are indicators from the Council for Great City Schools. We have KPIs that we turn into the Council for Great City Schools every year. So we feel positive about this outcome, and we will know for the March State Board meeting whether or not the state, after they review us, will move us to fully accredited or tell us we have to stay, and we'll have an opportunity to present our case in front of the state board in March. So that's where we are with that, and I wanted to make sure that you all know that conversation is still happening. But we have a lot to be proud of, and there will be an op-ed that will come out sometime in February from the Council for Great City Schools that will highlight the significant progress your Kansas City Public School District has made against other urban school districts across the country, and it's going to be eye-opening. So we have a lot of work to do. We're not where we need to be. If we are granted full accreditation, we're not where we need to be, folks. We're not at or above state average across the spectrum. We cannot let our guards down. And so we're going to have to work even harder, because I don't ever want to go back to being a provisionally or unaccredited system. And we're going to need your support more than ever as we continue to push this organization to be even greater for the kids and for all of you that continue to believe in us. So those are my comments. And Ms. Stocking, I'll open it up if I don't know if there's opportunities for questions, but a lot of what you may have, we're going to be answering over the next couple of weeks.
We'll accommodate your request. Dr. Wood. I said we'll accommodate your request for questions. So why don't we give it a couple minutes, and so if somebody has a question, you can please unmute yourself, and or if you'd like to place your question in the chat before we move on to the next point in the agenda.
And you may also ask your questions in Spanish.
Hello, my name is Jamie Thurman. I'm actually a district employee as well as a parent of 5 children within the Kansas City Public Schools. So when the models were going back in March, will it be a hybrid model, or will they have full classrooms at that time?
Yeah, at that point, especially with the vaccination being out, we're looking at bringing all of our students back. With the hybrid model, everything that I have researched on that, it just doesn't work. And also, I think a number of teachers have met with our union president, and they said that they would prefer to just have the kids rather than trying to do a hybrid model, at least her leadership. Now, I don't know what they're going to say with the rest of the membership, but once they talk to the rest of the membership. But in most of our schools, as you all know, we were already engaging in Blueprint 2030 before this happened. We got a number of schools where enrollment isn't where it needs to be, and that's a major area that we're focusing on. We do not anticipate for the vast majority of our schools having overcrowded classes. Many of our classes were not overcrowded before this even happened. And we also, like many other districts across the country, have taken a hit in enrollment. So we probably will have about 2,000 of our kids for certain that will stay in our virtual academy. And then our early learning kids that are in our early college model will stay virtual, because that's what the community college is going to stay at. And so they will just come in, and they will come in and take their assessments at the end of the year that they have to take on their sites, but they will be virtual. So they'll be, I think that's something that we'll work on. But at this point, we're looking at all coming back when it's time to come back.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Do we have other questions? Okay. Dr. Bedell, thank you again for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you engaging and providing us this information. It's exciting to think about vaccinations and our kids returning to school, although it's also a little bit, gives me a little bit of anxiety too, but that's natural. It's something that we're all going through right now. So thank you.
I have a lot of anxiety with you, but I'm like, okay, well, we at some point we got to move on. But I totally agree with you. I don't think the anxiety is going to go away in no time soon. So I think we'll work together through this, and I thank you all for your grace. I know this has been frustrating for all of you. It's been frustrating for me. Just like some of you, I've had to bring my 4-year-old to work with me recently to make sure that this work gets done. So if there's one person on this meeting tonight who wants these kids back in school, it's me. Trust me on that.
Could I ask one question before you leave, Dr. Bedell?
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, when you were speaking about that you estimated maybe 2,000 of the students would decide to stay in the virtual mode, is the virtual mode going to be still where the students will be seeing the active classroom that when schools start up? Will there be a camera and microphone in there? No.
No, those kids are in the virtual academy, so they'll be learning on our virtual, just like we did when kids do online courses. That program is online. So all of those kids will be doing everything online. We will keep teachers assigned to those students that are a part of that program. And honestly, I think that virtual academy is going to be a part of KCPS forever moving on. There's going to be a number of things that we've learned through this pandemic that will have to be a part of us moving forward as we work to try to give our families options on, anytime, anywhere learning, and to do it at a high level.
And can I just follow up? If we have students who are currently distance learning versus virtual academy, will they be allowed? Will they be allowed to switch models if there is a concern for their safety when the return to school happens?
So at this point, no, because we already sent that survey out and we're shifting teachers based on the responses that we got. That we right now have about a shift of 200 or so students that are coming out, and I think there's about 180 that may be going in, or I don't quote me on those numbers, but there's a number coming out and then there's a number coming in, and it is going to require us to make some personnel changes. So it's going to be static, and we said that back in August that once you would have an opportunity to make a decision to come out of it in January, for when we are able to bring back kids. But at that point, it's going to be very difficult. We can move kids into virtual. I think it'll be easier to move them into virtual than it would be to move them out of virtual back into in-person because of the ratio of the class sizes.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, and we're going to go ahead and we do have a packed agenda tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the announcement. Thanks again.
Thank you all
for supporting the kids. There in Lee Summit go, whatever sports teams.
Yes, it's basketball. We got about 3 of our teams out here tonight, so I told them I'd come out. This is the first time I get a chance to see all of them, so I'm going in the gym now to check on Central.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, bye.
Okay, bye. Okay, so we have just a few announcements, and the first announcement that I'd like to make is that the District Advisory Committee is partnering with the League of Women Voters and More Squared, which is a local social justice group, in hosting a school board candidate forum. We have an election coming up on Tuesday, April the 6th, and we have 4 seats on our school board that are up for an election. So if you are interested in participating in the planning of that forum, please put your name in the comments and just say interested in forum. I hope that everyone can join in watching the forum, but this would be for people who want to work with us in the League of Women Voters and More Squared. The time for that forum is going to be announced at a later time, but the date for the forum is March 18th. And we do have to figure out the candidates who have declared and their schedules and all that information. So please put your name in the chat if you're interested in participating in the forum planning with me. And I'd like to go ahead and pass it pass us off right now to Crystal Everett, who's our real world learning coordinator. Crystal?
Awesome. Well, good evening to everyone. I'm trying to have a 2-minute time limit, so I'll be sure to talk fast, but still make sure that you all receive the information. I am just here to make sure that we share information with you all as parents, school administrators, and other supporters, just about some real-world learning opportunities that we have available for students. Right now, Young Entrepreneurs of Kansas City is now seeking students who are interested in summer internships. It pays $10 an hour. They get a chance to work full-time, and also provides a $2,500 scholarship for students. So when we think about making sure our students have access to opportunity, this will be one of them. So the application deadline is coming up on February 15th, and students have to apply through their portal, go through an interview process, and those kind of things. For now, they are planning for the internship opportunities to be in person, but they did do a virtual last summer and are easily able to shift. So the important thing to note is the application deadline. This is for juniors and current juniors and seniors. So even if our students are graduating in May, they can still have this opportunity. And then just also that scholarship component is important too. So $2,500 if students complete that application. And so yeprogram.org/apply is the website, and I do believe this PowerPoint will be shared to make sure that you have that as well. Next slide, please. And this is another pretty cool opportunity. So Children's Mercy is having a summer program for high school students. They are only at this point selecting 5 students, but students who are from racially and ethnically, underrepresented populations who have an interest in science and medicine, and they're really specific about making sure that our KCPS students have an opportunity to apply for this program. So even if they've never had any experience in working in medicine or science, they get a chance to do some summer research with Children's Mercy. And so this program is modeled after a program at Duke University for students, again, from underrepresented populations who are interested in medicine and science. So another opportunity for students to get paid. So a $2,600 stipend is available for students who do that summer program. It will be in person at Children's Mercy Monday through Thursday, and then Fridays they get a chance to, I believe they work still virtually, but have some opportunities there. Another great thing, I'll put in a plug, they also are looking for a teacher. A teacher doesn't necessarily have to be in one of our science fields, or teaching one of our science fields, but that pays an $8,500 stipend for just one teacher. And so this summer they are selecting a total of 5 students. But as they grow the program, so I know you all have maybe at least driven past the new Children's Mercy Research Institute off of 22nd and Gillum. So students will have their own cubicle space in there. So again, really great opportunity for students to participate. The application, I think the email address is on the next slide. They are working to put this information online. You can email the STAR program directly. Vicki Yarborough is the contact person. I'm also happy to leave my email address and can forward that along. And the application for this one is due on February 12th. We also will have a KCPS homeroom episode about Children's Mercy and getting a chance to interview the Dr. Bridget Jones, who's done a lot of research around what it means to have people of color represented in the medical field and what outcomes that helps for patients. And so we'll get a chance to air that episode here pretty soon. And one more thing that's not listed, the Kansas City Urban Youth Academy has a summer journalism, sports journalism academy that will start at the end of February. So if you have students who are interested in both sports and journalism, again, no background is necessary. Students can apply for that. It'll be on Saturdays starting February 27th. And actually, I will drop this in the link. I'm in the process of developing, at least this is a Google sheet to share. It's not editable, but it does have these 3 programs that I've mentioned on there, as well as contact information, grade levels, application links, and those kind of things. So open to any feedback on how we make sure that we continue to share these opportunities with the students in your building and students that you engage with. So that sounds like about 2 minutes. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them via chat or here in this forum.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate learning about those programs that are available to the students. Thank you, Ms. Everett.
No problem.
Okay, so next on the agenda, we have Ariel Andrew, who's our student admissions recruiter. Ms. Andrew?
Hi, thank you everyone for the opportunity. Wanted to make you all aware of this chance that we have to connect soon-to-be middle school families and students with our schools. So on Tuesday, January 26th, from 6:30 to 7:30, we will be having a middle school virtual fair. All our middle schools who enroll and serve middle school students will be available. We will start with presentations from each middle school, 3 to 4 minutes from each principal. It'll go really quickly, but you'll get some great information. And then we'll have breakout sessions where participants can self-select the schools they'd like to learn more about. They'll have a chance to speak with principals, teachers, current families, and just have that opportunity for a virtual version of what a lot of our elementary and middle schools do to serve families in a non-COVID year. So if there's any questions, please feel free to send a chat to me. I'm happy to help. All registration and more information can be found at kcpublicschools.org/middle school fair. And of course, we will have some prizes. The grand prize is a $100 grocery gift card. So that if that helps to spread the word and incentivize registration, please feel free to promote that.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to welcome our next presenter. It's board member Jennifer Wolfsie. And we've invited board member Wolfsie here to discuss the 2021 KCPS legislative agenda and to learn more about working with our lawmakers in Jefferson City. So welcome, Jennifer. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Can everybody hear me? Give me a thumbs up, Susan, if you, okay. So just real quick, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm a parent in the district first and foremost of over 15 years. I was elected to the board in 2016 as an at-large member, and now I'm currently serving my second term. So tonight I'm going to go through a couple of things. First, explain to you just what is government relations. And then we'll talk a little bit about the legislative priorities that we have for this year. I'll try to give you a little insight. We've just begun the legislative session in Jefferson City, but I can share a little bit there. And then I think this is where I'm going to spend more of my time than anything is under parent engagement and advocacy. So if you'll go to the next slide, Courtney. Great. So what is government relations? Just so everybody knows, this is a committee of the board, but it is a collaborative committee. So there are 3 members of the board, myself, Rita Cortez, who I noticed was actually on this call as well, and Mark Wasserstrom. And we are joined by members of the district administration, Dr. Bedell, we have the general counsel, we have Dr. Collier in HR, Dr. Holliday Scott, who is over our new charter partnerships. We are also joined by Ms. Kelly Wachel in communications, and we usually have Shannon Jacks and Kathleen Pointer they deal more with the local side of things. We're also joined a lot of times by folks from DAC, such as Susan Stocking or DeMonte Rochester at various times if they're available, as well as Andrea Flinders from the AFT, our teachers union. So it's a pretty wide-ranging group, and what we are there to do is work on the legislative or the business of legislation and government relations as it relates to the district. One of our biggest pieces of work, so the process that we work through is we meet mainly monthly, but during the legislative session, we tend to try and meet every 2 weeks if it works out on the calendar. And that's just because there's a lot of information kind of flowing back and forth through Jefferson City back to us that we need to process and talk about. The committee itself does not actually make decisions. What it does is it takes on the business, like I said, of government relations or legislative affairs. We discuss it, we may debate it, and then what we do is we bring recommendations back to the full board. So a great example of that process is our legislative priorities, which is one of our big pieces of business every year annually. We usually start off by looking at our last legislative priorities. We discuss what's going on, what do we want to add, what do we want to maybe change, what do we accomplish before, what do we maybe want to take off. And then we bring that forward in a draft form. We present that at a board meeting. We try to get feedback from the general public. We go and tweak them, and then we bring them forth for approval. And that's typically completed by the end of November. We vote to adopt those usually in December in preparation for the new session that begins in January. Okay, next slide, please. So I will go through the legislative priorities kind of, I'll go a little bit at a high level, as I know we've kind of gone over these a couple of times out in the general board meetings. But the priorities this year, actually, a lot of them are pulled from last year, but maybe tweaked a little bit for the times that we're in as it relates to COVID. So our first one is around socio-emotional supports for students and teachers and staff. And that's mainly because, like, this came about last year when we were looking at the communities that we served and where our students come from and the impact that violent crime was having on those communities. And so we identified that we wanted to make sure that we were supporting legislation that increased funding for those socio-emotional supports for things like extra behavior interventionists, more social workers. But we actually tweaked this one a little bit this year to address two new areas, which were the impact, the increasing rates of COVID on the communities where our students live, and the digital divide. So one of the other areas that we'd like to see expanded funding for is telehealth in this new world that we're living in. The next one is around teacher compensation, and this has always been an area, again, this was from a priority we had last year that we pulled forward, and the area that what we wanted to do here was make sure that the compensation that we provided was competitive, livable, and differentiated. And so in the area of differentiated, what I want to make sure you understand is we, serve students that have a lot of, where there's a lot of trauma and a great deal of mobility in some of the schools that our teachers teach in. And one of the ways that, and even in some of the subject areas that we find more difficult to recruit in, your science, your math, and what we wanted to do is have the ability or advocate for the ability to have differentiated salaries in those particular instances, as well as just be able to increase the overall level of compensation for our teachers. But that, of course, would require additional state funding. So we wanted to make sure we support that. The next one is, it's called equitable treatment in charter counties. And that one is actually a combo of two from last year as well. There has been a push of late for equitable funding on the charter, in the charter side of things. And we had been working with our charter counterparts over the last year to identify and help. There are a couple of line items as it relates to funding that we wanted to make sure that we felt it was important they have that same level of funding that we get, with the understanding that that equitable treatment in funding comes with equitable treatment in all things. So let me explain a little bit. What that means is, if you're going to receive the same sorts of funds that we would expect you to also be subject to the same rules of the road that we are in the public school system. So one example would be we are labeled both at the district level but also at the school level with an accreditation label. And I don't know if a lot of people realize that that same level is not given out on the charter side. So that would be one way that we would be treated equally. Another is that these are public dollars that we're talking about have being equal, and that what we want to make sure is that if these are public tax dollars, then just like the public school systems in the state of Missouri, where we have audits that are publicly put out on our website, and we have a very transparent procurement and purchasing process where you can see the contracts that we end up doing with vendors. We expect the same on the charter side of the fence as well. And I've actually been kind of keeping an eye on this more recently. I've been starting to go to the various websites, and we are starting to see a lot of that. But we want to make sure that that is a part of this legislation, that those things would be expected as it relates to if you're going to get the funding, you need to be doing these other things. Some of the other things also as it relates to equitable treatment in charter counties is just the fact that all board meetings should be publicly noticed so that people can attend them if they want to, and then that they have the minutes from those meetings available to the public as well. The third legislative priority is around assessed valuations and the Hancock Amendment, or Article 10. And this one gets a little bit chewy, but essentially we want to make sure that not only are property owners protected when assessed valuations go up, but also us as a school district are protected as assessed valuations go down. I'm not going to get into the weeds on this one, but this one's a very interesting subject if you ever want to talk to me about it. A lot of people don't realize we are the only school district in the state of Missouri that isn't protected by this Hancock Amendment. And so, for instance, when in 2007 and 8 assessed valuations declined, we saw a significant decrease in revenue over a 10-year period. While our other counterparts around the state actually were protected from that dip. And then likewise, their taxpayers were protected when their valuations go up at a significant rate. And so what we would like to do is work with legislators to bring Kansas City Public Schools in under the Hancock Amendment and Article 10, which is that leftover piece from our desegregation case. So just doing that in a very fiscally responsible way. Our last priority is actually not related to the state level, but it's related to the local level, and it's one that's near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. It's around incentive reform. I don't know if a lot of you realize that we have a significant amount of our property tax revenue that is diverted from Kansas City Public Schools. Specifically in 2020, we actually had $38 million in 1 year that was diverted. And that was an increase from the year before, 2019, of 30 million. So in just 1 year, an additional $8 million was diverted. We as the district, we understand the value behind property tax incentives used for development, but what we really want to do is make sure that those abatements are decreased to a more balanced and reasonable level, and we want a voice in how that's done, and we also want to make sure we drive more of those to development of underserved neighborhoods. Okay, next slide, please. Perfect. So I'll just kind of let you know the session started January 6th. This is the legislative session in Jefferson City. It will end, just if you're interested, the second Friday in May. we're at the very, very beginning. Committee assignments have been completed, both in the House and the Senate. The Ed committees are all seated. We do understand at this point that, based on the opening comments from the House Speaker, that he will be focused on education reform. Specifically, he's looking at putting forth some legislation around education savings accounts, which are actually more commonly known as vouchers, as well as open enrollment. There are other areas that I think, in the interest of time, I won't go into all of these. The charter expansion, we've recently learned that will more likely be in the world of virtual charters and expansion there versus charter expansion. And then the equity funding fix the glitch that I have down there. It relates to me talking about equitable treatment in charter counties that I spoke about earlier, that the charter association is working to ensure that certain levels of local funding are flowing through to them. And as I said, we had worked previously with them. Just so you know, we have so much movement between our schools, between the Kansas City Public Schools and the charter schools. It's important because of that mobility, and at any point in time, their students could become ours and ours there, that we make sure that we are making sure they have the resources they need. But again, with the responsibility as it relates to transparency and accountability for those dollars. So what I want to talk about here, a couple things. Because of COVID this year, you'll actually be able, if you're interested, you can listen, I think, to the Senate sessions, the hearings, and the debate on the floor, or watch if you're looking at the House. I think they're actually going to be using video. So I'm trying to think. So what I want to talk about here is how we influence legislation, and essentially the way that we do that is we, and by that I mean usually it's the district administration, we build relationships with our legislators by keeping them informed about different pieces of legislation that are showing up that we either may be for, so we want to go on the offense for those pieces, or against, which we may want to try to go on the defense. We also utilize our lobbyists, who we utilize John Barget and Associates, specifically Chris Ropey is the person we work with most, to assist us when we can't actually be present in Jefferson City. And a lot of times we'll also utilize other organizations, such as the Missouri School Boards Association. We might use, or we might work with teachers unions or Missouri PTA. There's various organizations that you can partner with when you're trying to lobby on behalf of, or maybe against, a piece of legislation. One of the other best ways to influence legislators and their votes is actually through parents and students and the sharing of their stories and their direct experiences. And I know this because this is kind of how I got into the seat that I'm now in. So if you don't mind switching to the next page, we're going to talk about parent engagement and advocacy. And Susan, I'm looking at you. Just give me a number of, like, do I have about 5 minutes left or 10?
Yeah, if we could go for like another 5, and then we have a hand up for a question.
Sure, perfect. So I'm going to try to keep this short, but I will tell you, I've been feeling I've got my big D democracy on today, okay? Because it was like a huge day. Like it was a day of big emotions. And I think part of it is because I'll give you my short story. I actually, like I said, it's my second term on the board, but how I got here, I will literally tell you, I had a teacher who recruited me to start up again my school's garden box program. And I will tell you, it was just doing that and getting involved with my students' school on a bigger level, not just for my student, but for all students. and then getting involved more in the parent organization at the school level, which then led me into more of a district level engagement, to where I am and advocating on behalf of the schools in the district at the state level, going down to Jefferson City, talking to legislators, advocating on behalf of legislation, and then eventually running for a seat on the board. But this is how things change. This is how things improve, and how things get held accountable to you, the parents, and to the students who you're there to help. And we need you. And I just want to encourage. I know there are a lot of principals on the call. I know because I looked through the participants. I recognize some parents. I recognize some community people who are new that I am super psyched to see them there. And we need you. I say we, meaning the district and the board and just public education in general. We need you to get involved, to find your voice, and then to go help us do what we do. And the reason I feel like we need you is you hold us accountable. I had it written out. Essentially, parents hold the schools accountable, they hold the district accountable, and they hold the board accountable. And who do you hold us accountable to? The most important thing ever, our students. And so I would encourage you that what you need to do if you are interested in kind of doing engagement and advocacy is the next step is really becoming an informed person in that regard. And we're trying to make that super easy for you by creating a weekly advocacy e-news that really we take all this information, we try to get it down to what you need to know. And so the next slide will have this email that I'm going to say, or you can just look at it there. But you send your email to, or send an email with your name, if you're willing to share your role in the organization that you're with. So maybe you're a parent at such and such school, and where you might also want to receive a text. We're trying to get to the point where we could actually send alerts if we need you to maybe say something to a city council member or a rep in Jefferson City. But send it to legislative alerts at kcpublicschools.org. And what that will do is you'll get signed up to receive the advocacy e-news. It comes out every Friday, and it just brings you up to speed on what has transpired as it relates to our legislative priorities. And then the other thing I would tell you under Get Engaged is let me, my information was on the other screen, or even let your principal know if you're interested in maybe taking another step. I'm not going to shove you out in front of a legislator tomorrow, but you know, it's little bitty steps that get you to that point where you're comfortable sharing your story and wanting to advocate on behalf of your students or your school. So please reach out. I'll walk you through the process and hold your hand. We need you and would love to have you on board. So hope that wasn't too long, Susan.
Oh, thank you so much. And we do have a question or a raised hand from Linda Bullock. Are you still with us? Maybe that was, okay. I'll open it up. Does anybody else have questions for Board Member Wolfsie? And principals, I can speak from experience too that, probably one of the best ways to get engagements from parents is to ask. It's the act of being voluntold or just the being invited into the process. So principals, Jennifer's laughing too, because she will put me in front of legislators at a moment's notice, but it takes some time to get there. We won't do that for everyone else. But principals, really, if you have parents that are interested in this kind of action and would like to, stand up and maybe even develop a relationship with your legislatures, please volunteer them, ask them, put them in contact for legislative alerts. You guys have a lot of power in recruiting. So again, thank you for holding this. Okay.
Can I say one thing to the principals as well? Principals, you tend to know the parents in your community that actually have stories to tell. Those parents may not feel comfortable identifying themselves, but you may know, and what is incumbent on us is to get them comfortable telling it. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're trying to, if you're thinking about this, is you most likely know the ones that have some stories to tell.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your presentation tonight. I'm just going to move it on. And Kelly, we just have a little bit of time left for you. Sorry, that happens at the end of the agenda. I love that these things are so packed, but I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Kelly Wachel for a discussion on the calendar.
Greetings, everyone. I will make sure that I take 5 minutes because we've all been on these screens today all day, and whether you're a student or a parent or employee, we are ready to get back in person to avoid maybe looking at a screen all day long. So one of the things that Ms. Wolfsie talked about, looking at legislative priorities, looking at our interactions with the state, legislation coming down that might impact KCPS. One of the things we're really interested in is the calendar and how we maximize student learning and time for our kids with some of the learning loss that's occurred over this past year. So we had been looking at, as a district team, with our union, with some of our teachers, looking at what next year might look like if we had a pretty newly designed or adjusted calendar that had intersessions. And when we say the word intersessions, we were looking at, having first quarter, then maybe having 2 weeks off where the kids would get a whole week of interventions and personalized learning. And then there would be a week off before we went to the next quarter. And that would kind of be the pattern for the 4 quarters of the school year. One of the things that we talked about with that was having consistency, though, might be important when we come back after having a year of COVID online learning. Our families and our staff might like that consistency of a traditional calendar. So what we've come to thinking of our calendar for next school year, 2021-22, is looking at that extended day that Dr. Bedell kind of mentioned. What would it look like if we kept our kids an extra half hour, an extra hour, 2 days of the week to recoup some of that learning loss and do individual, really intentional instruction for those students who stayed with us, which would be everybody. We also talked about early release to capture some of that PD, that professional development that our teachers might have lost. But looking at early release, we thought that it wouldn't be a good look if our kids were out early every Wednesday, given, again, the learning loss that may have occurred over this year. And so those are the 3 kind of calendar options that we were looking at. But we're really intensely focusing on this extended day portion of our calendar as we build it for next year. So knowing that we don't have a whole lot of time here, I was looking for some qualitative, just sentiments from the DAC, whether parents, actually mostly parents, as we talked with our administrators about this already. But what do the parents think about extending the day a little bit next year, early release for professional development? Just give me some of your thoughts initially, knowing that we're still building this right now.
Kelly, as a parent, what I would say that, I have no problem with you keeping my child longer than a regular day. The extended time might be easier for me as a parent to accommodate rather than an early release, although I do understand that there may be a need. If there is a push towards early release, there needs to be some advanced planning and early child care for parents with younger kiddos. And, as we're recovering from COVID and getting back to work and going back to buildings and that's happening, just keeping that in mind if we're talking about early release.
Yep, and thank you for that note. In the chat, it looks like it's that Melissa who had a question. about extended day. Extended day would be for targeted students to reinforce some of the learning. However, looking at our data right now, team, we are seeing significant loss among, lots of our students. So do we just keep everyone and extend the day for everyone, or do we keep it with the targeted individual instruction for those students who need it? That's something I would like your feedback on. So was that again, Melissa, who asked that question? Yeah, Melissa, what do you think about that question that you posed?
Yeah, thank you. It's been really challenging, I think, this year for parents as well to understand whether your own student's experience is super unique or whether it's representative of other students. So I do not want to speak in general for parents, but I do know that one kind of bright spot for the distance learning for my children has been smaller group learning opportunities where they've had their general class sessions, which again is wonderful, but in some ways the virtual space has allowed for some like small group reading groups, small group math groups, things like that. And so I didn't know whether this might kind of take advantage of some of that opportunity. So I think it could be positive for all students, but I would wonder if it would just simply be an extended day or whether there would be some different structures for learning that could benefit kids at different levels, because I think that is going to be a challenge for teachers as well, welcoming students back into the classroom, knowing that some have really struggled during this time, others have actually excelled. And so wanting to make sure that all students, regardless of their level, are being able to kind of get some of those targeted opportunities. So I don't have a specific opinion per se, but I do know that has been kind of a bright spot for some students that I'm aware of.
Yeah, great feedback. Thank you for sharing that. I was looking in the chat again. There's another question in the chat. Is it Andrea? Agree with Susan, supportive. Early release can be tricky with the scheduling perspective. Yes, my understanding is that maybe a couple years ago we posed an early release schedule and it didn't really go over very well with parents. It wasn't very well received. And again, the piece of how that looks after being out, we're not super keen on looking at early releases, every week or every month, knowing that it would make a challenge for our parents in scheduling. One of the things we have to consider, though, is how do we provide that professional development for our teachers and our staff, and that possibly means maybe adding some days to their contracts at a cost, but the CARES funding could maybe recoup some of that cost for the PD that we might add to keep our kids in school during those whole days, and again, mitigate that learning loss. I love listening to you guys. Any other comments or and thoughts about calendar? Do you think it's wise that we try to stay with the traditional calendar this year with some consistency? Are you interested in thinking about intersessions with more of a, early August to early July intersessions, more, not even year round, but more of a, longer calendar with longer breaks in between?
I'll just speak as a parent to youngers and just say that even with extended day or the intercession options, the childcare option is obviously like the largest. As they get older and we talk about maybe early release days being difficult for the olders, all of these choices become really difficult for the littles. A week off in the middle of the school year gets really difficult to try and schedule children who can't stay at home at all by themselves. And same thing even really with extended day. You've got kids in kindergarten, first grade, we pre-K in our building, and mine's that's a really long day. Not that they don't need it, but that becomes a really long day. And then you might have siblings, for example, one stays over and one doesn't. That's a lot of transportation option back in there. So I know for my building, transportation would be a big thing, and then definitely what are those accommodations for those littles? So.
Thanks, Catherine. Great points. I think maybe what I should say too is transportation would be a default across any calendar option, right? We will commit to transportation for any calendar adjustments that we would make in the future. It's imperative that we provide transportation for all scenarios.
Yeah, because I know in the past when we've done after school teaching or tutoring for like 4th, 5th, and 6th, or those guys that do it before map testing or whatever, it was only if you could provide transportation, pick up your own student. So, I mean,
yeah. The conversation was even if let's say we implement tutoring, right? So we do tutoring sessions 3 times a week, which is proven, in the research that we've been looking at, tutoring does work. Targeted tutoring for students who need it does work, but we'd have to provide transportation. We do want to eliminate transportation being a barrier for any student who might need extra work or additional support at our schools. Thank you for offering that, Catherine. Okay, we're over, guys, but I'm happy to take as many questions as you want or comments as you want, knowing that for me, DAC is really valuable when I get to hear from you. We get to hear from you, and you talk to us. So any other comments or thoughts?
I think we have Melissa Velasquez with her hand up.
Yeah, sorry to add more here, but I did have another question. As Dr. Bedell mentioned, that there may be aspects of the virtual academy that carry forward even after, a return to in-person class. Is there any thought about, and I've had no exposure to the virtual academy, but is there any thought about the ways that maybe aspects of the virtual academy could be used as support for some of that extended time in the classroom, or an extended day, meaning like that that some students might receive, their in-person learning, but some supplementary content through virtual modules? Or I'm just curious what we've learned during the pandemic, like what might carry forward to actually change what our students' school day might look like.
Great question, Melissa, and the answer is yes. We're considering several options with the virtual academy right now to carry over. One, it will remain next year for an option for all day for our kids to move through their learning, whatever grade they're in. But also, dual credit. How are we offering dual credit with online courses for maybe our high school kids or even our younger children in our elementary grades, middle school, who might need online tutoring? We're getting ready to pose that for a teacher lens to have teachers be able to do online tutoring at the end of the day, once students go home. So again, lots of possibilities that we have learned. To your point earlier, some children excelled in this environment or are excelling in this environment, and some really need to be with us in person, and that's been a good takeaway for us to hybrid and mix and match the approaches, and that's very much in play. I don't know if Dr. Bedell mentioned, he talked about night school, Saturday school. Typically our children who are most engaged have good attendance, take advantage of these opportunities. So how do we still engage those students who might not have the attendance that we're looking for, and again, make these opportunities that kids want to attend, as well as make them valuable when they need the academic recovery. So yes, I think the mixing and matching, the hybrid approach is very much what we're looking at in our arsenal of what we provide for our kids. And I'm going to look at the chat, Melissa, and see if you said something else there. Okay, yeah, good. Okay, I'm being told that it's back to DeMonte to close us out. If there are no more questions or comments. Appreciate you all. It's really great to see your faces, and I very much miss you all in person, and we can't wait to see you all soon.
Well, thank you, Kelly, for your presentation, as well as thank you to all our presenters and Dr. Bedell as well for this great evening. We had a full night of information. I hope you guys can take that information back to your networks and across the spectrum to our other parents in the district so that we can all collaborate together and come together as one. Our next DAC executive meeting will be on March the 17th, and at that meeting we will talk about elections for the next following school year, and that'll also be a meeting where those parents that's on the line could come and join the DAC X as well. So think about March 17th and mark your calendars. That will be the next executive X board meeting, you guys have opportunity to chime in and join and see what that is all about and see if this might be something or a great fit for you. At this point, I will close the meeting out. And if you guys have any more questions or board members have anything they want to share before we close out, and we'll call it a night. At this point, I guess we're closing the night out. You guys have a great night, and hope to see you soon. And think about those that want to join DAC-X on March the 17th. Good night, guys, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.